Okay, obviously we're in the new year, and I hope you all had an amazing new year and are enjoying January, however you want to do it. I know there are lots of people doing dry January, which I think is weird, but each to their own. For some people, it's a necessity because obviously, if you are having issues with alcohol, this is a necessity for you. It's a great jumpstart for people with alcohol issues. But the concept of New Year's resolutions is a big thing, and for lots of families, especially women, losing weight is massive. It's a massive part of the whole New Year thing. But I did cover a whole topic of that in the last video. This reality that I had a conversation, well, it wasn't my conversation specifically, but I've seen it online as well, all on social media. But I had a conversation with an old friend of mine. She doesn't live near me. Very strange conversation actually. But she'd had a conversation. She doesn't have kids at all, but she had a conversation with one of her friends. They've got children in nursery, and they were put their children on a diet, and whether or not it's okay. They thought it was a good idea, and they were upset because the nurseries the teachers there had a go at her. She had been flagged by social services because putting your children on a diet is never a good idea. That had yeah, and she had this conversation, and she relayed it to me. But it is something I've also seen on social media. This concept of putting children on a diet because your family is going on a diet because you want to lose weight after Christmas, blah 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 blah. Now, I would now this concept of seeing it on social media is a weird concept anyway. But the fact that I had a conversation with somebody who this has happened to was just bizarre to me. Now, obviously, I didn't have the actual conversation, but I know someone who did. You know, and the reality is, you should never be putting children on a diet unless specifically done by a medical profession. Now, if a doctor, pediatrician, specialists of any kind in a medical position puts your child on a diet for medical reasons, fine, do it. It's for medical purposes. There's a reason behind it, and you will be given those reasons, and you'll get a letter to give to your schools, local nurseries, kindergartens, wherever you are. You'll get a letter for it, specifically stating the reasons why this child is on a diet, what the diet includes, and what reason for it. You'll get a letter from your specialist, from your doctor, from your pediatrician, from whatever medical person put this child on a diet for. Other than that, you should not be restricting the amount of food you give your child. There is no reason on the face of this earth that you should ever put a child on a diet unless it is for health reasons and done by a medical professional. We all know that children have allergies, they have intolerances and things like that, and then they'll put on specific diets, like dairy-free diets, vegan diets, vegetarian diets, gluten-free diets. That is not the same thing. You can have a lactose-free diet, you can have a dairy-free diet, you can have your child on a gluten-free diet, you can make them vegan or vegetarian. You can make them pescatarian, which is a fish only and no meat, or, that is fine. There is nothing wrong with any of that. That is a normal everyday thing. You can make your child dairy-free, gluten-free, vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian. I don't care. That is not an issue. There is never going to be a problem with any of that. The problem is when you decide to limit the amount of meals or the portion sizes so that you are actively starving your child because you believe they need to go on a diet, like we adults go on diets. You know, it's one thing for an adult to go on a diet, you know, where we only eat 2 meals a day, or we only eat 1 meal a day, or we decide we're only going to eat like the tiniest amount of food, you know, or we stop eating at a certain point in the day, or we're going to skip this meal because we're going on a diet, or we're only going to eat a certain amount. We're adults, we get to decide that. Children burn a lot of energy, they burn off a lot of calories. We adults don't burn off half as much energy as children do. They need that energy and they burn it off so fast. Anyone under the age of 5 will burn 10 times more energy than someone under the age of 10. Anyone, you know, and someone over, you know, once they hit the age of 10, they burn off a little less energy because they're not quite so like rough and tumble, they're not quite so energetic because they're heading into secondary school. And then they're doing things like playing football in the playground, or they're sitting with their friends, or they're not always as energetic during break times and play times and lunch times during school time. They're not always. We know this because they're in secondary school. You know, but every child, once they're outside of school, then, and in this day and age especially, we know that not all children are going to be really super active. But children under the age of like 12 especially, you know, you get to, especially once you get to teenage years, they are not super active children. You know, but you should never limit what they're eating unless it's health reasons. Children are active. They burn off a lot of energy. They need the extras. It sounds bizarre to say it, but you should never limit. You know, you should give them their 3 meals a day and they get their little tiny snacks. You should never like overfeed them. I'm not sitting here saying overfeed your children, make them super fat. I'm saying feed them properly. Give them their 3 meals a day. Let them actually be full up. And, you know, allow them to have a couple of snacks during the day. You know, it's not going to kill them. You know, they're allowed to be snacky. It's okay for that to happen. You know, children burn those energies. They just do, you know. They get to teenage years and they're not going to burn quite as much energy, but they're still going to burn way more energy than we ever will. Unless you're active, super active into like loads of sports and you're going to the gym like 2-3 times a week or once a week or whatever. Unless you're super active as an adult, you know, you're never going to burn as much energy as a child. Even teenagers, despite the fact that they're not as active as children, burn way more energy than we ever will. You know, they actually do. You know, how many times as children have we actually, look at us, I mean, let's face it, as children, even as teenagers, we were far more active than most of our parents. And yeah, I mean, let's face it, at 40 years old, we were born in the 90s, I mean, teenagers in the 90s, we were always like far more active. But even children, I mean, teenagers back when my son was a teenager in like the late teens, like 2015, you know, they were still fairly active, you know. Okay, so they spent more time indoors, but they were still fairly more active than we ever were, you know, than we as adults are. You know, so unless you're actually active as an adult, you know, you go into the gym most days, or you go and do classes, or you know, run, or you know, you have a very active job, you know, you do manual labour, or you work in a job where you're very active, or you are an active person, you're not going to burn a lot of those calories off easily. You're just not, which is why most adults go on diets, or most adults desperately want to try and lose weight and try and do everything under the sun to do that. But you should never put that on a child. Children love to copy their parents and the adults around them. It's our job to teach them that they don't need to lose weight. There's nothing wrong with them. They're fine. They're healthy, and there is nothing wrong with anything they're eating. Just because we want to lose weight and we want to diet doesn't mean they have to. And the fact that society has gotten to a point where they are even beginning to think as parents it's okay to put a child on a diet baffles me. It actually does baffle me, because there is nothing on the face of this earth that states that even begins to sit in my head and go, oh yeah, I'm having a diet, let's put my kid on a diet too. Unless it is prescribed by a doctor, paediatrician, medical specialist of some kind for some medical reason, there is no way on the face of this earth we should ever put a child on a diet. We shouldn't be restricting their food intake. Not ever. It is the most ridiculous notion on the planet. We should never be doing it. And the fact that we have come to a point where society has gotten this mindset that they think it's okay. I mean, the whole idea baffles me. I mean, it's like we're going backwards as parents. I mean, it is like parenting has become, you turned into parents and gotten stupid. It's kind of insane. I mean, it does make me wonder why there isn't a license for parenting sometimes. And yeah, I know that sounds really crazy, but sometimes I do believe that when you get pregnant, there should be, you should go through some kind of test to make sure you're actually capable of parenting. You know, there really should be. There should be a test, and you should get some kind of license to say that you are capable of parenting. I mean, you should, because some of these parents are ridiculous. There should be a certificate that comes out and says, you are an able parent. You are capable of parenting. You have passed this exam. You are an able-bodied parent. You should. There just should be right now. I mean, we're in 2025, and there should be a certificate. There should be a course that you need to pass when you get pregnant that states that by the time you have this child, you are an able-bodied parent. That you understand the very basics of being a parent. That, you understand that as a parent, it is your job to teach your child right and wrong, to set boundaries and rules and regulations. It is your job to discipline, not abuse. It is your job to take care of your child. It is not your job to palm your child off on other people just because you can't be bothered to parent them. It is your job to, look after their welfare, emotional, physical needs. There should be a test right across the board that tells you everything you need to know. You're supposed to learn all of it and then take a test. And when you pass it, and then after you had baby, you go through a series of little minor tests just to make sure you're okay with baby. It just should. It just should. That is how it should happen. I know it sounds ridiculous and really over the top, but seriously, sometimes I do wonder that is how it should be happening. It'll never happen because, yeah, we won't never. It's a ridiculous notion because, you know, why would they? And two, we will never have the manpower to do that. Let's face it. We don't have the funding to create enough workers to be able to focus on, you know, every single household with parents in it. And nobody would ever do it anyway because it's a ridiculous thing to say. But I do believe that's how it should be, right across the board. But it will never happen, I know that, but still. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to go because I feel like I'm going a bit kind of weepy. Anyway, I love you all. Happy New Year.